Hello, welcome to Full Record Jacket. Thanks for joining us. We are the music show where you can't actually hear any music. It's just us talking about it. I'm Phil.
I'm Ben.
And now on this edition, we're going to be talking about one particular album, and that is the second album by Beady Eye, the group, of course, fronted by none other than Liam Gallagher. Came out in 2013. 2013, this album. It's called BE. And Ben, as the our resident Oasis Gallagher superfan, what can you tell us about this album?
Well, it's the second one, isn't it? BE. Like you said, released 2013, 11 tracks. One of them I'm not particularly massively keen on, but yeah, it's a good album full of no choruses, is what I'd say about it. I think the second bite of the apple was the first single. Shine a Light was the second one, and Soul Love being the third, I think. Mr. Tricks, I would have released Flick of the Finger, the opening track, because I think that's probably the best song on the album, I think. But it's the first time I've listened to it since 2013 when it first came out. And I was always put off by the fact it had a lack of choruses. But revisiting it, it's actually quite mega. It's actually really good. And that's how we're on this discussion today.
Yeah, your revisiting is what prompted this. Now, I was not really familiar at all with this album until about 2 days ago. So I've had a totally fresh listen to it. I think I've heard one or two of the tracks before when they were on the radio at the time. Flick of the Finger I do remember, but the others are not that familiar to me. Now, Beady Eye was formed, I think, am I right, 2011? Is that when it started? Or was that from the first
2009,
album?
2009, literally, I think.
Was it 09? Right, okay.
Yeah, I think within a couple of weeks of the Paris incident, as it's I think it's called now. Beady Eye came out of those ashes, and with some really good songs. To be fair, most of them, I think a lot of them written by Gem Archer, things like The Roller, etc., which I believe he had around. Well, he had it during Oasis, and I think Noel Gallagher said they just never found time or the room to fit it on any album, really, which is a shame. Well, it's not a shame because it did get released, and I think it suits that sort of modish 60s style of, I think, what Beady Eye tried to get over, as it were.
Yeah, now this is a band that had, well, looking at the credits, from what I can see, basically three songwriters, because Liam Gallagher is credited as the writer on some of these.
Yeah,
Gem Archer and Andy Bell, who of course was a member of Oasis and was initially known as the main man in Ride.
Right.
So he had quite a songwriting pedigree already. I mean, what do you think in terms of the contributions to this album? Is there one that stands out as a songwriter for you, or are they all pretty much even?
I think the Gem written tracks are very, very much in that sort of heavy stereo sort of vibe. They're got that sort of soulish funk sort of feel to them. And I think Liam's vocals on them all are really, really good, but they're all individually, they're just, I think as a collective, I think they actually work better than they did in Oasis, I think, as songwriters on this. Now, I think there's one track, I think it's Flick of the Finger, that I think they all had a pen in, I think that one. I think that was written by the three of them. But I think Liam wrote the majority. I think he had 4 or 5 tracks, and then Bell and Archer with the remaining tracks. But yeah, apart from its lack of choruses, I'm glad I've revisited it. It's given it a whole new life to me.
Well, I'll tell you what my first impressions were. Now, the thing I noticed first was the production, and I looked it up. There's this guy, Dave Sitek, who produced it, and he'd apparently not worked with any of the Gallaghers or any of them before, and he was known for doing Weezer and the Yeah. So he'd worked with a lot of these American alternative bands. And the thing that struck me about it, I think his production to me reminded me a bit of the Mark Spike Stent production on Standing on the Shoulders
Thin
of
on the
Giants.
shoulders.
In that
Yes.
it's quite a sophisticated sound. It's not like a raw garagey sound. It's like
No.
it sounds like it's been done in a high tech studio, and there's a lot of sort of sonic textures on it.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
And I quite liked that. I didn't mind that kind of thing. In fact, the second track, am I right? That's it. The second track, which is Soul Love,
Soul Love.
ends with this very long atmospheric-y
Yeah, that's
noise.
the one track on it that I never used to like. It just sounded. I have a thing with certain songs where they just feel clumsy lyrically. The tune might be good, but lyrically they feel clumsy. I had it with a couple of tracks on Stereophonic's third album. There's a few tracks on that where it's like, you must have gotten to the end of the album and gone, this is all I've got, mate. This is lit. But revisiting Soul Love, it's given it a whole new meaning to me, Philip.
It's quite mellow. It's quite mellow and atmospheric. To me, I was listening to it in the evening, at night. It was quite atmospheric,
Yeah,
and I can imagine it being an album that you could have on in the car driving at night.
yeah, and it comes after that thumping intro of Flick of the Finger. I haven't looked up where that speaking part at the end of Flick of the Finger comes from, but it is quite dangerous and naughty.
Well, yeah, I thought Flick of the Finger, I think, is good rock track. I like the sort of, I don't know if they're real horns, but those sort of horn bits on it that gave it a bit of life. And then it goes into Soul Love, which is a lot more atmospheric, much more slow song. But then the tempo picks up again with Face the Crowd.
Yeah.
Which has got some. It's got this sort
Bell track, that one.
Yeah, it's got this sort of cycling guitar riff, and then there's a bit in it where there's some hand clapping and stomping going on. I thought they were almost going to break into Glad All Over by the Dave Clark Five, but I quite enjoyed that. This is just I made some notes on my first listen. Okay, first time I heard it, I thought Second Bite of the Apple was a bit repetitive, but then I must admit I didn't think that the second time I listened to it. I have to say this album improved for me on the second listen, but the second listen was in the car. First listen was on headphones on proper hi-fi. Second time was in the car, and I actually quite enjoyed it the second time.
Yeah, I think, like I said, apart from the lack of choruses,
I
don't think it needs the choruses, and that's what put me off the first time was, there's nothing to hold on to. There's not like a stadium anthem in there.
No, well, I think for me, of course, the thing is when you're listening to a record where Liam Gallagher is the lead vocalist, you're kind of expecting, or you subconsciously want a Noel Gallagher chorus melody and an anthemic song. That's not what this is.
No, and I think that second bite of the apple is, I think I made a note, I think, because he does sound quite Lennon-esque in a lot of these tracks, but I would say that's probably his most Lennon vocal, maybe. Yeah,
that's what I'd got written down here as well.
Yeah. Soon Come Tomorrow. To be fair, a lot of these tracks, like I said, I've not visited since 2013, but I thought Soon Come Tomorrow was a really good pop rock song.
I noted down for that one, could be a grower. I wasn't blown away by it the first time, but there was something about it I thought, I can imagine this will grow on you if you heard it more. There's this one called is it called Eyes Right? Is Right?
It is right.
Eye is Right.
Eye is Right, or something like that. Yeah. Is it track 6? Is Right? Is Right?
Spelled.
This is where we get into the bit where we say we're ill prepared.
It's spelled is
right, isn't it?
That's how they spell it. I must admit, it didn't totally grab me the first time, but then I heard it the second time in the car, thought it was good. And then there's this, I'm just saying, to me, was the most Oasis-like of the songs.
Track on there, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'll agree with you on that one.
And then I also, the other one that's quite interesting on here, because I'm presuming that there's a number of I'm slightly confused now because I did also listen a bit to Liam's solo album, As You Were. So I may be mixing lyrics up here, but there were a few typical nods to Noel in these lyrics where Beatles songs and other songs get referenced. I
Yeah,
think I
yeah,
think there's more on the As You Were album because I think there's one of the songs on there that mentions Helter Skelter and Gimme Shelter and
yeah.
stuff like that.
But
But there's one that references "Give Peace a Chance," which is obviously a blatant Lennon reference,
yeah,
and that's the one called "Don't Brother Me," which is the longest track on the
yeah. I think it's
album.
about over 7 minutes. I think
Yep.
that one.
And is this? I mean, I presume this is aimed at Noel. Is that right?
I would presume so. Yeah, looking at that title track,
Because it says
not
something.
title track, but the title of the track.
There's something in the lyrics about "Be a man and let's shake hands" or something of that
Yes,
nature.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
he's obviously singing "Give Peace a Chance." So I'm guessing this is is this Liam's equivalent of Paul McCartney's "Dear Friend"?
Quite possibly. Well, he's done a couple of these tracks, hasn't he? Because I think he did one on his. He definitely did one on the One of Us, with the video quite poignant with the three brothers and the three chairs. And I think he has made a couple of these sort of um, hand in peace sort of records. You know, it's obviously bothered him more than it's bothered his brother. So in order to put it in a song, but yeah, it was a good track. Shine a Light, another good track. You know, very Liam-esque song. And then it was Start Anew, because I was like you, I was convinced that was part of his solo stuff, Start Anew, but that's a very gentle, it's just a very peaceful ending to the album. Really, it starts off with a neutron bomb and finishes with a bed of cotton wool.
Now, when the first Liam solo album, that was credited as a Liam album, came out 2017,
Yeah,
remember there was a lot of fanfare about that, and it was given good reviews. And it seemed to be almost the case that people were saying, "Yeah, this Liam solo album is great, so we can forget Beady Eye now.
yeah,
He's now doing good solo records." So it's almost as if Beady Eye was being swept under the carpet a bit. But then looking at these reviews, and I didn't really read many of them at the time. I must admit, I didn't realize NME gave this album on release 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10. Yeah,
It was given 7 out of 10 by Uncut. Um, the newspapers were a little bit more sniffy. The broadsheets, The Guardian and The Independent both gave it 3 out of 5.
yeah,
But it has a rating on All Music, where of course they are basically retrospective reviews. They kind of update
yeah,
these reviews, and that is a 4 out of 5 album on there.
yeah.
And
I think it's solid.
I must admit, I thought first listen, yeah, this is, if you're a fan of Liam Gallagher, you'll like this album. So I was thinking it was kind of a 3 out of 5. But having heard it again, I'm sort of thinking, yeah, I can sort of see perhaps why people gave it a 4. So, I mean, I've only heard it twice. I can't really give a final view
Yeah.
on it, but I think it's a 3 or a 4 for me. I don't know which side I would come down on.
If you'd asked me, in 2013, I'd have said a 3 out of 5. If you ask Ben now, older, wiser, more handsome, ask my mum. I'd give it a 4 out of 5. I think I've definitely, it's gone up retrospectively up the chart.
It's a grower in the Gallagher catalogue.
Yeah, and it has been swept. I think it has been swept under the carpet a little bit. Beady Eye. It doesn't seem to get the mentions that it does. But I've tried buying this on vinyl. You can't get it for less than £100. So there we go. I think the cover, I think that had to be censored in the end because it's got a lady orb on it.
Okay. So did the vinyl come out in 2013, or was that like a retrospective reissue?
No, I think it did come out in 2013. I don't think.
But didn't sell as many as they do perhaps nowadays.
Yeah, it wouldn't have sold as many as now, but I don't think it's ever. I mean, I could be wrong. I'm wrong about a lot of things. Look at this haircut. But I don't think it's ever had a reissue. But I could be wrong.
You could be. I must admit, I'm not up on all these various formats and things. You know me, I'm more about the music than the format. But
Yeah.
but it must be a bit rare if they're going for £100. So.
Yeah, I think so. This and the first album, Different Gears, still speeding. Both very expensive to buy on vinyl. So unless anybody's got a copy they want to sell me for £20, you know.
You never know.
You never know. You never know. As you can see, some of my vinyls behind me, none of which are Beady Eye. So.
Well, that's Beady Eye, the second album. B, voted 4 stars by Ben, currently about 3 by me. So at the moment, we're rating it somewhere in between that and saying it's definitely at least a 3.5 star album.
3.5, yes. Yeah. Which is better than I thought it was when I first heard it.
So if you're partial to a bit of Liam and you haven't heard this album, it is worth checking out. Thanks very much for checking us out. We do appreciate it. Remember, if you subscribe or share us, that will help us build the channel if you love listening to our ramblings. Until next time, thanks for listening.
Smoke me a kipper.